Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, right here on Game Plus Network. Thanks, as always, for taking the time to hang out. Chris Meaney here with you today. A lot to get to on today's show. Of course, we have Thursday night football between the Carolina Panthers and the Houston Texans. That means on Thursday, like every Thursday on the show, we got Gilles Gallant of FTN. He's going to stop by. We're going to talk about his favorite props for this evening's games. He has a couple touchdown props for us, and he's been crushing it. You can catch him over at ftnbets.com. Also over at Bets TV, a couple shows that you should check out because, like I said, he is absolutely winning a ton of money for people out there. Dog Day Afternoon you can catch on Tuesdays, and then Touchdown Sunday Touchdown Town you can catch on a Sunday rather, just before kickoff, where he has a few picks for you. I also have a few picks, some props, and we'll attack today's game, as well as we'll take a quick look at week 3 from a DFS standpoint. I got a few plays for you that I like, and tomorrow we'll dive deeper into just DFS in general, take a look at ownership and projections. We'll have a stud from ftndaily.com join me. Elliot Chris is joining me tomorrow as well to talk about his favorite props for this weekend's game. So a lot to get to, and we really didn't get to the most traded players or guys to sell high. I'll address that towards the end of the show, but really it is going to be largely about today's game. We have Carolina and Houston here, using our free parlay calculator and prop shop to get the best possible odds over at ftnbets.com. Seeing Carolina at minus 400. I don't think that's for you. It's certainly not for me. Even including them in parlays, I don't think it's totally worth it. They are favored by 8 points here on the road in Houston. The Texans home dogs plus 340. If you are indeed backing the Texans, I don't suggest it. I think Carolina wins this game probably by 10 points. I could see 10 to 14 points. The total is 43. I actually like the under here. Carolina has played to the under in their first 2 games, and this defense is playing really good. And we've had this conversation on the show before. I believe when Elliot joined us, and he was giving an exact order of the division and how it would play out. Of course, Tampa at the top. But we both gave a lot of love to Carolina, mostly because the addition of Sam Darnold is part of it. The playmakers that he has, like, he doesn't have to do a whole lot, and you're seeing that. He is well on his way to a career season. When you have Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, who he's familiar with, and they drafted Terrace Marshall, and you got Joe Brady, who is a great offensive mind, and this team was only going to continue to get better offensively. It was a slow start for them against the Jets, I found, in week 1, but I liked what I saw from them last week. And then here's a really good spot for them against a Texans team who has kind of hung around in both games. I mean, they won week 1 against Jacksonville, and they did hang around against Cleveland, but they lost that game, and they have a lot of holes, in particular on their defense. And now they have to go to their 3rd string quarterback. Deshaun Watson obviously is not going to play in this game. Tyrod Taylor is also not going to play in this game. So it's Davis Mills. But what I like so much about this Carolina team that I think is underrated, and not a lot of people are talking about them, is their defense. A couple years ago, they were the only team just to draft. All their picks were defensive players, and they've really bolstered their defense over the past couple of years. I mean, they lost Luke Kuechly, which was a big loss for them, but they're still adding some pieces over the past couple of seasons that I've liked. And heading into week 3, they are the number 1 ranked defense. They have 10 sacks, which leads the league. They have 21 quarterback hits, which leads the league. They're number 1 against the run. They're number 1 against the pass. They're number 1 on 3rd down. They're number 1 in points. This defense is playing great. There's 8 guys on this team with at least half a sack. This is going to be a tough go for Davis Mills. Like, who's he throwing the football to? It's just Brennan Cooks on this squad. Maybe they'll use all their running backs and try to slow the pace down and run the football, but I don't know how much success they'll have. So I like Carolina to win this game by double-digit points, and I think we're going to see the under hit. I think it could be like a 24-10 game, something in around that range. Maybe we give Houston 14 points, and then, you know, if Carolina can get 30, then we're still going to be right in around that number at 43. I'm going to go with the under. But Carolina, I think, to cover 8 is certainly the bet for me. And it's just so tough to take any team here on the money line. Don't feel great about the Texans. So for Sam Darnold, I think he's a top 15 quarterback this week. I have him at QB 14. Our rankings are live over at ftnfantasy.com. And Jeff Ratcliffe also has him as a top 15 quarterback. And then Robbie Anderson, getting a lot of questions about Robbie over the past couple of weeks. I would buy. I am a little concerned about his target usage. But he's still playing more than Terrace Marshall. He's getting on the field more than him. He's playing more snaps. He's running more routes. And I think this could be the breakout game for him. Now, you probably can't acquire him today, but if you had Robbie Anderson and you're feeling a little uneasy about what he's done for you so far this season, I play him this week as a wide receiver 3 or a flex guy. The Texans just gave up a ton through the air last season and on the ground. So I think we'll see maybe a deep shot or two for Robbie Anderson in this game. A couple news, notes, and injury to talk about before we bring in Mr. Gallant. Let's start with Amari Cooper. We brought him up yesterday. As I've said so much on this show, Friday is the big day. If these guys can't get on the practice field on Friday, then we should be concerned about them. But Amari Cooper was limited today. That's great news. But again, you need to have a backup plan just in case, whether it's a Jalen Reagor, a Cedric Wilson, Dalton Schultz, Blake Jarwin, heck, Quez Watkins for Philadelphia. Hasn't done a whole lot. He did have the 91-yard catch last week. There's been a couple times where Jalen Hurts has taken some deep shots with him down the field. You just don't want to take the 0. That's it. Just have a backup plan. Odell Beckham Jr. was a full go yesterday. Jarvis Landry is placed on the IR. The Browns are not throwing to anybody. I know OBJ hasn't been playing, so that's part of it. They're really just running the football and throwing to their tight ends. We haven't seen a whole lot with their wide receivers. If OBJ doesn't go, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones or Anthony Schwartz could become interesting in this matchup here this week. But I do expect him to go. But when he was asked, he said, we'll see. So no secrets. They're not telling any secrets in Cleveland. But I think OBJ owners should expect him back. And the game is at 1 o'clock, so we'll get a good feel for it early on. Delvin Cook did not practice yesterday, and all the reports out of Minnesota is that it's just a rest day and he should play, so I wouldn't worry too much about him. But Madison, maybe potentially on your radar. If you are a Cook owner, you should probably maybe have him on your bench just in case. Trey Sermon, concussion, on a good path to play according to Kyle Shanahan. Elijah Mitchell, shoulder injury, has a chance to play. He didn't practice yesterday, so it looks like Sermon trending in the right direction, and we're iffy here on if Mitchell could play. Trenton Cannon's on that squad. They just signed Jaquiz Patrick, who played in the XFL a couple years ago. He's a big boy. He's 6'2", 234 pounds. I don't know. He probably should be rostered just in case, Sermon or Mitchell can't go. But not a great situation in San Fran. Darrell Henderson dealing with a rib injury, missed practice yesterday. Get Sony Michel ready, but against the Bucs, I don't know. Flex play at best. That's a defense that doesn't give up a whole lot on the ground. And if Henderson plays, flex play for me at best as well. He's going to be outside my top 25 at the running back position. Reports out of Indianapolis say that Carson Wentz, they're preparing for him not to play this weekend. And then some reports over at NFL Network today, I forget who it was from. It wasn't Rap Sheet, but he said the Colts could go with Brett Hundley and Jacob Eason in the same game, that they could just go back and forth. Yikes. Dial up the Titans defense. I'd play Donovan Taylor. I'd probably play Nyheim Hines in a full-point PPR league as a flex. I don't know who else I'd play if it's Hundley and Eason. I don't know. Maybe Pittman as a flex. Jamison Crowder had a setback on Friday, and he didn't practice yesterday, dealing with a groin injury. In deep leagues, Braxton Barrios has 18 targets through 2 games. 18 targets. He's playing in the slot. It's a nice safety valve for Zach Wilson, who hasn't looked great. The offensive line hasn't looked good. I expect Corey Davis to bounce back. They just played the Pats. What do the Pats do? What do we know about the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick? Is that they do a great job of taking away the opposing team's best player. That's what happened. Corey Davis really didn't do a whole lot last week. I expect him to bounce back, but maybe Barrios is an interesting play in DFS or in a full-point PPR league. Laviska Shenault, shoulder, good to go. Josh Jacobs, ankle, looks like he won't be able to play. It could be Kenyon Drake against his former squad in Miami. Could be a little Peyton Barber, but Drake does have at least 5 catches in each of his first 2 games. We hit the over in his catch prop in week 1 and week 2. It was 2.5. I don't see anything just yet. I think the books need to know what the status is for Josh Jacobs to get in there with Kenyon Drake, but I'd take anything over 3.5. And it looks like Derek Carr is good to go. And speaking of the Raiders and Las Vegas, we're doing something pretty cool over at FTN, just taking care of our FTN subscribers. It is FTN Subscriber Appreciation Vegas giveaway. Vegas, baby. Are you kidding me? You can win a trip to Las Vegas and catch the Raiders versus Washington. That game, week 13. You got your seats, you got your stay. It is all there for you. The trip to Las Vegas, value of $5,000. You get the airfare, the tickets to the Raiders game, you got a hotel in Las Vegas, and a whole lot more. Also prizes, cash, FTN. you got to check out ftnfantasy.com. I have it linked to my Twitter account as well, just everything that's there. The first place is the grand prize, which I've talked about, the tickets, the flight, the hotel, and the cash. Second place, $500. Third, $250. Fourth, $150. And fifth, $100. And we'll draw this out. And in the article, it kind of shows, basically it's kind of a ticket point system. So like if you have the diamond package, you're going to get 20 tickets. If you have the all access NFL package, you're going to get 15. If you have NFL bets, it's 10. NFL DFS, 10. High stakes, 7. Things like that. So the more packages you have with us, obviously the better it is. So check out ftnfantasy.com. Check out my Twitter account at Chris Meaney. I have it linked there. And yeah, man, Vegas, baby, you kidding me? I want to win this. I want to go. I have to check out a game at Allegiant Stadium. I gotta go. Like, it just looked absolutely bumping in week 1. Like 64,000 fans there. It's on the list. I typically do a football trip every year. Last year was a little rough. This year, the world is still not completely normal, but Vegas is on my list. You got to check it out. And this is absolutely free. So if you're looking to be part of the FTN fam, check out FTN fam and check out ftnfantasy.com/pricing. Use the promo code Meaney or Mean Streets for a little bit of a discount. If you want to just a monthly package, NHL is coming up. We've talked so much before about just the betting package. It's $49.99 per month. You're not just going to get everybody's NFL picks. You're going to get all the content. You're going to get everybody's picks across every sport. So Mean Streets, promo code, or Meaney as well. Or I'm sure Gilles Gallant has one as well, and we'll bring him in next. We're going to talk about this game tonight, also preview a couple other games that he has his eye on for week 3 of the NFL. Keep her locked. Mean Streets continues right here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. Proud to bring in, as we do every Thursday, Gilles Gallant of FTN. You can catch all of his content over at ftnbets.com. And of course, over at Bets TV, the Twitter handle for you is at Bets Media and GDog5000. You can catch him Dog Day afternoon, which is Tuesdays, and Touchdown Town on Sundays. Mr. Gallant, what's going on, my friend?
Hello, media. It's always good to join you on a Thursday to share some touchdown scores, make some jokes, reminisce about our college days, those kinds of things.
I don't know if anybody wants to hear about those college days. I don't know. We did have some good times. There's no question we did. And here we are, roughly 15 years later, talking on Game Plus TV, man.
And you haven't aged a bit, and my hair is down to my shoulders now. So clearly...
If you guys believe it, yeah, your hair was short, dude, in 2000.
Shorter than yours now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And mine's not too short. I got a hair appointment tomorrow. We'll get a little bit shorter tomorrow.
This is what happens when you get into sports betting. You get kind of almost like a midlife crisis kind of thing, and you start being like Howard Hughes, growing your hair out, trying to pitch ideas and stuff. Yeah, so I hear you.
Well, dude, I love the flow. So keep it going here. Tonight we got Carolina and Houston. We got the Panthers -8 favorites here, the total at 43. Massive home dogs here, the Texans +340. As I said earlier, I wouldn't suggest anybody picking them, and we can't get involved with Carolina on the money line. So let's call some touchdowns and let's visit some props. Unless you feel like maybe the Texans could cover today. Got Carolina coming in, the #1 defense in football, #1 in sacks, quarterback hits, #1 against the run, the pass, third down, #1 in points, and now they got to go to their third-string quarterback in Davis Mills. But Mills could be interesting tonight, could he?
Well, and I think that's the one thing that scares me about taking the Panthers is because the look-ahead line coming into this game was around -4, -5, and then Tyrod gets ruled out, and now Davis Mills is playing. Is Tyrod Taylor really worth 4 points? I don't know. It just, to me, the amount of shift that we have seen with Davis Mills coming in instead of Tyrod Taylor, I just don't know if Taylor is worth that many points. That being said, I'm not willing to put my money on finding it out, but that's what made me just immediately stay away from it, because that spread is too big for a Panthers team through 2 weeks they've looked good, but again, it's a very small sample size.
Yeah, it's a very small sample size, and they also played the Jets in week 1. So what are you looking at today for some touchdown props?
Well, and that's the thing. Of the 3 touchdown scores I do have today, 2 of them are on the Panthers, because I do think the Panthers are going to be the ones dictating a lot of the scoring in this game. First one, we got to go with Robbie Anderson at +185. I got him at FanDuel. If you look at the trends through the 2 weeks, Texans got beat on some long touchdown passes, both to the Jags and the Browns. You saw DJ Chark. You saw Marvin Jones. Dominic Felton, I believe his name is, with the Browns, is another one that got a long touchdown score. Anyway, the point is that they were both 30 yards plus, which is right in Robbie Anderson's wheelhouse, because he is such a guy that just does the long bomb type of shot. And I think the stats are a little bit skewed as well. Again, the recency bias of 2 weeks, because if you look at the stats of last year, like the targets and the red zone targets, Robbie Anderson was leaps and bounds above DJ Moore. And for myself, when I'm looking at that, I just feel like the stats are a little skewed. And when you can get a wide receiver like him, who could just basically catch a touchdown off of one pass, just a deep bomb at +185, I prefer to take him over Moore or McCaffrey, who are sitting at minus odds or +120 kind of thing. And also, just from an odds comparison, I got DJ Moore last week at +210 to score in week 2. Now down to +130. That's too low.
Yeah, that is too low. And, I've been talking to Robbie Anderson for, a couple times, I think, on this show. Is, people in the fantasy community are a little sour on Robbie, of course, the first couple games, but he has been playing more snaps and running more routes than Terrace Marshall. I know people want Marshall to take that step forward, and sure, he's a fine player, and he's going to be a great player in the NFL. And I'm sure, as we get into the middle parts of the season, we could see his, usage grow inside this offense. But Robbie Anderson is that deep threat. And last year, the Texans allowed 11 plays of at least 40 yards through the air. That was just one behind the league high. So don't kid yourself on what you've seen so far from the Texans this season. They just played a Browns team who they haven't targeted any of their wide receivers or pushed the ball down the field just yet. And then they played Jacksonville in week 1. And we did see some big touchdown plays in that game. And particularly, DJ Chark had a nice long touchdown pass from Trevor Lawrence in that game. Okay, what else do you got?
Next one, again, sticking with the Panthers. And this one, I think we talked about this. I think he's a little bit of a fan favorite here at FTN. I'm going with Dan Arnold at plus 450. Those odds are at BetMGM. One of the reasons why I was really encouraged with this was just looking at the Texans defense in the first 2 weeks. They allowed 12 catches and 120 yards to tight ends in week 2 against the Browns, and then 7 for 70 yards and a touchdown versus tight ends in week 1. You remember Chris Manhertz is who caught the touchdown against the Texans. And he's starting to emerge in the offense. He's got 7 targets through 2 weeks, but he's starting to play a lot more snaps as well. And I really think this is good odds for a player, especially when he was with the Cardinals last year. He scored 4 touchdowns on a 4-week stretch last year and was just on fire. So again, I feel like from a tight end standpoint, I would prefer him over Ian Thomas or Tremble. I think is another one that's on the depth chart. Has started to see his snap counts come up. Dan Arnold at plus 450, I think is great odds.
Yeah, I think that's great odds too. Yeah, weapon inside the red zone. I don't think it'll all be Christian McCaffrey. I think Sam Darnold and his touchdown prop is like 1.5. I mean, I think he tosses a couple scores here today, and hopefully to Dan and Robbie, and then we'll be well on our way. So you said you had 2 Carolina guys. Who are you?
I do, and I have one more now, and this one I was so excited when I locked it in on Wednesday morning. I thought, you know what, I'm going to get ahead of the curve here, and it's Davis Mills at plus 900. I got this at Bet365, but he's still at like plus 800 at FanDuel and other sites as well. So I'd still play him at plus 800 if you're not getting as good of odds as I did with Bet365. And part of the reason why I liked him wasn't just because everybody else is on it, but also just the Panthers allowed Winston to run one in week 2, and Jameis is just not a running quarterback really at all. Like, you know, if you look at his previous time with Tampa, like that wasn't his bag. And they allowed 6 rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks in 2020. That was the 3rd worst in the NFL. Now, I know obviously it's a big step up to the NFL from the Pac-12. But the one thing I did like as well is in his senior year in 5 games, he did rush for 3 touchdowns. Davis Mills did. And in the red zone, you usually see, you know, rookie quarterbacks, when their first read is gone, they panic and they just tuck and run. And we saw it last year. Like one of the best examples last year was Taylor Heineke in that playoff game against the Bucs. Ryan Finley last year making his first start against the Steelers, same thing. And it also, I mean, one of the things that people love to bring up to me is it's worth noting, he did run a 4.5 in his 40 for the pro day. So maybe he just scrambles and takes off and nobody catches him on the edge.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. I know we've had a great discussion in one of our Slack channels. I think Elliot, did he sprinkle a little something 50 to 1 for first touchdown?
Yeah.
I mean, why not, right? Why not try that out? But yeah, what you got 10 to 1 or, you know, plus 850, it's still certainly worth a shot. Yeah, I saw that too. I was looking deeper into like, who is Davis Mills, right? Like, who is this guy? And there were some, you know, positive reports from scouts. You know, I drafted it. People thought maybe potentially he could be taken at the end of the first. Yes. Now, that doesn't happen, but yeah, 3 rushing touchdowns at Stanford last season. All right, from a prop standpoint, I got a couple too that I'll give towards the end of the show, but what are you thinking?
My 2 props are both Carolina props too. So because initially, obviously, I wanted to bet Davis Mills interception. It's at minus 200. I'm not going to do that. Just because it is going to happen doesn't mean that I'm betting, you know, 200 to win 100. It's just not going to happen for me. That's not how I bet. So instead, I went on the other side of the fence, and I'm taking Sam Darnold to throw a pick at plus 115, because that guy, as much as you want to talk about the first 2 weeks and how good he's looked, 40 INTs in 40 career games. And the Texans have forced 4 interceptions in 2 games. They got Baker to throw a pick. They got Trevor Lawrence to throw 3 picks. Yeah. For me, with his track record, and I know you could say always away from Gase now, so, you know, he's better. And it's like, come on, Gase can only impact so many of those interceptions. At least 20 of those are Sam Darnold's fault. So it's a joke that it's plus money for just Sam Darnold to throw a pick in this game.
And at least 4 are ghosts, I think.
Against the Patriots,
Against the Patriots, yeah. I like that one, actually. As much as I think Sam Darnold could throw a couple touchdown passes today, clearly, as you just said, an interception per game is something that, you know, we could bank on potentially a pick as well. All right, one more prop.
All right, final one. Guy. Yeah, and again, talking about DJ Moore, I'm very happy with how it worked out last week against the Saints, scoring that touchdown. I think we're going to see a lot more action with him. I'm not necessarily certain he's going to score a touchdown, but he has been used so much between the 20s from Darnold. He has 14 catches in 2 games. So I'm taking DJ Moore over 5.5 receptions at plus 120. And to be honest, I think this game is going to be closer than we think. And I just think for at least the first half, he's going to be heavily targeted from Darnold. And maybe that's kind of why I'm lending it a little bit more to the Darnold interception prop. Just I think there's going to be a lot more throwing from Sam Darnold than people are betting on, thinking that he's just going to basically hand it off to Christian McCaffrey the entire time. So to get both of those props at plus 115 and plus 120, to me, I just feel like those are the best angles that you could take based on the track records that we've seen and the matchups that we have.
Yeah, I love the Moore one. I like his over yards too, 67.5, but the over 5.5 grabs, I have that as well at plus money. And you mentioned the catches, 14, but 19 targets. Why I like the yards too, I mean, he's so explosive after the catch that he could take one to the house and he can get to that 68 yards. I mean, he's had at least 68 in 9 of his past 13, 1,100 yards in each of the last 2 seasons. And we talked earlier about the Texans and, the 1140 plus passing yard plays that they allowed last season, one behind the league high. But it's clear that DJ Moore is Sam Darnold's guy. It is very clear that he's the go-to guy. I mean, even Christian McCaffrey catching balls out of the backfield, DJ Moore does have more targets and he plays more snaps and he runs more routes. He's a big part of that offense. I love those picks, dude. All right. We'll take a quick break and we'll take a peek at week 3 and see what else you're feeling here. There's a lot of appealing games happening this week, and we'll talk about them with Gilles here next on Mean Streets. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney and Gilles Gallant of FTN Bets here with you, taking a look at the early look, I suppose, at Week 3. We don't, like we always say on this show on Thursdays when Gilles joins, is that we don't have all the touchdown props just yet. This is why you need to be following Double G at GDog5000 and check out his shows over at Bets TV. Bets TV and Bets Media is the Twitter handle. I don't want to get confused, but it is Bets TV, but the Twitter handle is Bets Media. You can catch Dog Day Afternoon and Touchdown Town. So like I said, Gilles, there's a lot of appealing games here, like intriguing games, I would say. Like you got the Chargers and KC is a high total game here. We have Tampa and LA. I mean, that's could be a preview of the NFC Championship game. Those two teams going at it on Monday night. Your squad, my squad. That should be an entertaining game as well. The Eagles and the boys. And then the Niners and the Packers on Sunday Night Football. So there are certainly some intriguing games and some high-powered games, like in terms of offense, that we could see. Seattle, Minnesota one as well. What are you looking at? Early looks. What catches your eye?
Yeah, the first one is that heavyweight matchup between the Rams and Bucks. And if you're going to give me the Rams as a home underdog, the line has been flipping throughout the week. I've seen Tampa -1, Rams -1, +1. Doesn't matter. If you can get the Rams at plus money, grab it, because I think the Rams are going to beat the Bucks because of the passing offense. Really, when you look at that Bucks defense, I mean, we saw it in week 1 and even week 2 up until Matt Ryan decided to take a big dump on the field. They were carving up that secondary. Stafford had just under 600 passing yards through 2 games, 5 passing touchdowns, but the Bucks have given up 700 passing yards and 5 touchdowns through 2 games to both Dak Prescott and Matt Ryan. And I think Stafford is a better thrower of the football of both of those guys. And that's kind of where I see how the Rams will have the edge, because you can't run the ball on the Bucks. They've only allowed 11 rushing touchdowns since the start of last year. So you could basically forget about trying to think about Darrell Henderson props, or at least over props if he even does play. But I just feel like there's not really a matchup that you can give me in the NFL where if you give me the Rams as a home dog, you bring the Chiefs in, you bring whoever, I'm taking the Rams money line each time.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you there. And they beat them last year. And I know things were different with the Bucks, and it took a little bit for them to get going, but the game happened towards the end of November. I'm looking 27-24. Brady wasn't great in that game. 26 for 48, 54% completion rate, only tossed for 216 yards, and he had 2 picks in that game. This Rams defense is absolutely legit, right? Through the air, on the ground, and then you add Matthew Stafford, and what Stafford is doing with this offense, and we talked about it so much, Jill, on this show, is just basically the words from Sean McVay that there's no limitations inside this offense with Matthew Stafford and what he can do. So that's going to be a highly entertaining game. I'm unsure about the total. I think it would just be like maybe an offensive struggle despite both of these quarterbacks and the offensive weapons that they have. I don't know if it cruises past the over like 55, 57 points. I don't know if I can truly get there, but I do like the opportunity here with the Rams. And something I was looking at in our pace tools over at ftndaily.com is Tampa has like a pass percentage of 77%. Only the Jags are throwing more than them, and only the Jags are running plays quicker than them too. I feel like Tampa at some point maybe has to have a little bit of balance, even though Brady can sit back and do what he wants with all of his weapons. But also at the same time, something that you were talking about, which makes me think why they're playing at the up tempo and throwing the football, is that their defense hasn't looked as great as it has last season, right? There's some holes and they're giving up some big plays.
Well, and I think that's the thing is people look at that game from week 2 against the Falcons and they see those 2 pick sixes and they just think, okay, well, the Bucks romped them. But when you actually look at where the score was in the 4th quarter, it was only a 3-point game. And the Bucks ended up covering the spread as a result. But and I think a lot of the thing about this game too is it's kind of a mirror image of each other as far as how they play and the matchups. But I prefer the Rams secondary over the Bucks secondary. I think Jalen Ramsey is going to shut down one of the two, Chris Godwin or Mike Evans. Yeah. And I just think that really Gronk could be a deciding factor. Maybe he might be somebody to consider again to score a touchdown just with his rejuvenation of 4 touchdowns through 2 games. But yeah, Rams money line I think is going to probably be my favorite play to make just because of if you're going to give me a good team like that at plus odds, I'm going to take it every time.
Yeah, and again, I always pump the parlay calculator just to get the best possible odds out there. And you're right, it has flip-flopped a little bit, but plus 105 over at DK is the best. BetMGM has plus 105, PointsBet as well, plus 105. So home dogs here for the Rams. There's a lot of like heavy dogs here. I mean, we got the Falcons plus 120, plus 130. The Saints are plus 130 into New England. The Chargers are plus 246. And the Colts are plus 210. We don't even know who the heck is going to be the quarterback. Some reports that it could be Hundley and Eason in the same game.
Oh, my God.
My goodness. Chicago's plus 260 into Cleveland. Washington's plus 315 into Buffalo. What else? Do you have another dog for us? I mean, it could be a spread. It could be a player.
Well, I do have an underdog, but I'm not sure our producer Tino's going to enjoy it too much when I say it. Is that I actually think the Falcons can win this game. I really think that this line is a bit of an overreaction to week 2. And just because I think it was a lot closer of a game against the Bucks than people realize. And I'm not as thrilled with the Giants offense. Like, yes, I feel like Washington's defense is still strong, but there's just something missing here for me where I feel like I could legitimately feel comfortable taking the Giants as 3-point home favorites against this team. Now, that being said, I am going to probably be looking at Giants touchdown scores in the wide receiver realm because the Falcons have given up 8 passing touchdowns so far this year. That's the worst in the NFL. I think it's the next closest is 5. So probably Sterling Shepard, Galladay. I'd probably be looking at Slayton or Shepard from a touchdown scorer perspective, more so than Galladay, just because I think you'll get better odds for them over Galladay.
I agree. I like Slayton too. I mean, he almost reeled that in week 2 just off his fingertips, but he's that deep threat guy. And I saw Kenny Galladay pop up a hip thing, which, he missed most of last season with a hip injury, but I believe the odds would be better with a guy like Slayton. Galladay's a little bit more known, has been a touchdown beast over the course of his career. Slayton, maybe that deep threat guy. Tino, do you have your mic on? Are you able to chime in here on
he's going to rip me apart here in a minute.
Let's go.
Okay. Here we go. I'm in. You got to give me a sec. I don't expect an ambush every time I run Mean Streets. Every show, someone's got to say something. It's all right. Hey, listen. Just know, Joe's already knows this. I'll be at the game, so if they do lose, I'll be just as miserable as I am right now. At 0-2, as 0-3.
In traffic, too.
In traffic, yeah. Avoid. Hopefully, honestly, I'm pretty good at depicting it. I'll probably leave midway through the third. I'll know it's coming before it happens. But
yeah, but you're there for Eli, right?
Yeah, we're there for Eli. So I only got to stay to half, really. That's really the only point of going. We're staying till half. But you're right. You hit it on the head. I think this could be a golly week. I know he yelled at Jason Garrett a little bit there. Maybe that means he'll get a red zone look. I wouldn't make any guarantees, but maybe that's what he was yelling at, to give him a red zone look. But it's okay, guys. Picking against the Giants is normally the right thing to do, especially when they're favorites. I don't know why they're favorites, but it's a completely
different
thing.
If you've done it so far, you've won money in week 1 and week 2. Yeah, Jill, you know what? The Galladay call is definitely interesting, and a lot of people thought that he was ripping Daniel Jones, but he was just yelling at Jason Garrett. Maybe they do find a way to get him more involved, right? You know well.
Bane of my existence, man. Bane of my existence. I'm so glad he's gone, and that's saying something with Mike McCarthy there. So, just it's a poop show in Cowboys coaching land.
On the way out, speaking of that, would you lay the juice on the? I mean, you're not this type of bettor. You've already said it too many times. But Dallas minus 190. Is this a game that you're just going to avoid altogether and say?
That's an Eagles money line play all day for me. And part of the reason is not just the fact that I think that they can score on this defense, but this is the type of divisional matchup where I think the Eagles could actually exploit some of the things that they were doing. I think the Niners kind of are significantly, obviously, a better defense than Dallas. But I think they limited them so much that I think people are now soured on the Eagles offense, whereas I think they can still exploit Dallas. Like I think Dallas Goedert, for example, is going to score a touchdown in week 3 against the Eagles. So for me, if you're going to give me plus odds for an Eagles team that is, maybe a little bit under the radar here, I'm going to take them because first off, there's 2 things. One, I generally don't bet for the Cowboys ever, just because I'm more of the emotional hedger. Like I would gladly pay a unit if it means that Dallas wins the game. If not, at least that way I took some money away from it.
Fair. Yeah. And +4 right now for Philadelphia. And if you watch that game, I'm not saying that you didn't, but if people are looking at the box score in San Fran and they didn't give up a whole lot, the Eagles actually did pretty well. They dominated that first half, and it was just some rookie coaching mistakes, which is going to happen with this team. But Nick Sirianni just got a little bit too cute on the one play. I mean, they were like on the 1 first and goal, and they 4 plays that they ran, and the 4th one was some ridiculous Philly special garbage that was just pathetic. I don't
Philly
understand.
Special needs, man.
Yeah, no kidding. And it cost them. And then that was, to me, the turning point in the entire game. But, still that they hung around with those 49ers. Jill, always a pleasure, man. You are absolutely a baller. Fantastic. I love talking to you on Thursdays. Make sure you check out Jill on Twitter, GDog5000, and check out his shows. You will be richer because of it. We're going to continue here to talk some more props for tonight's game. Also have some DFS plays for you for week 3. Keep her locked. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you. We're going to continue to talk about Carolina and Houston here. I got a few props for you, and we're doing okay on the props so far. We got 14 units on props alone, 19 overall. Again, $49.99 will get you the NFL betting package where you can get all the picks from everybody, the content, the live stream shows. I have a show on Sunday morning with Elliot Chris and Matthew Freeman. Those guys are absolute sharp, so always learn a thing or two from talking to those guys. And plus, you're going to get picks from every single sport and a lot of tools over at ftnbets.com. So here we go. Mark Ingram up at the top, over 9.5 rushing attempts. Why would you do this, Mark Ingram? I did it last week as well. He's got 40 rushing attempts in 2 games. He had 14 last week when his team played from behind. So that was the big thing. The big takeaway in week 1 is, wow, he had 26 rushing attempts. He wasn't all that efficient with it, but that was the outlier game. Houston's not going to be up in games. Let's see what he could do when his team is trailing if he can get double-digit carries. So we jumped on that last week. We got it. I'm going to jump on this probably every single week if it's at 9.5. I think he could get to double-digit carries. In fact, I wouldn't give that to you if I didn't think that he could get to at least 10 carries in this game. The Texans, one more prop when it comes to the Houston Texans, and it's Brennan Cooks over 5.5 grabs. You can get that at plus 115. You know, he's had 21 targets and 14 grabs. He's a league high 56% of his team's air yards and a 36% target share, which is number 2 in the NFL. There's just really nobody else on this team. Like, who else is going to catch passes? I don't care really who the quarterback is. We can't really love Tyrod Taylor as a QB. Do we like this guy? Do we think he's a phenomenal QB? And Cooks has sailed over the 5.5 grabs and over his receiving yard prop in each of the first 2 games. He's been a big part of this offense and really the only guy inside this offense. Danny Amendola is not healthy. Andrew Roberts is like the second on this team. Chris Conley, like there are just so many holes. Like Cooks is going to get fed the ball, especially if Carolina gets up in this game by double-digit scores. I think the rookie quarterback will lean on his vet and Brennan Cooks. And there's a lot that they could do with Cooks. They could move him around. They can get some bubble screens in there. They can find a way to get the ball in his hands. So over 5.5 grabs at plus money. And DJ Moore, we kind of already talked about it with Jill, but over 5.5 grabs is plus money. And I like the over 67.5 receiving yards, 19 targets, 14 grabs, 159 yards. He has topped 68 receiving yards in 9 of his last 13 games. He averaged 79 yards last season. That's exactly what he's averaging this year. And in 2019, he averaged 78 receiving yards. He has 1,100 yards at least in his last 2 seasons. He's really good. In fact, I think people are only now starting to talk about him as an elite wide receiver. He really is an elite wide receiver. He doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. He did last week. But again, they find ways to get the ball in his hands, and he's super explosive that he could take one of these catches to the house. And we've seen him do that multiple times. That's why he's been inside the top 10 in receiving yards in each of the past couple of seasons. Last year, for sure, I don't know about 2019, but he was right there with at least 1,100 yards in each of the last 2. And plus, also want to hammer home this point, Houston allowed 11 plays of at least 40 yards through the air in 2020. That was one behind the league high. There's a lot of holes in this defense. And then Sam Darnold, he could throw a pick all he wants. I hope, in fact, that he does for Jill and everybody that is going to tail Jill. And you know what? I may as well. I think he probably does throw a pick at plus money for a guy, 40 picks in 40 games. A remarkable stat there. But also, he's going to toss a couple touchdowns, isn't he? Yeah, I think he does. Maybe one to Robbie Anderson and potentially one to maybe Dan Arnold. But also DJ Moore could be involved as well. So that's it from a prop standpoint tonight. There's a lot of action over at ftnbets.com. Use the promo code MeanStreets or Meaney. Get involved in the betting package. Like I said, you can get everybody's bet across every sport and all the tools and all the content available to you over at ftnbets.com/pricing. All right, going to take a quick look at week 3. I got a couple DFS plays in here for you next. Don't go anywhere. Mean Streets continues here on Game Plus Network. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. I just wanted to give you my thoughts on week 3 from a DFS standpoint. Tomorrow we will have an FTN Sharp who's a whole lot smarter than me at giving DFS plays with a lot of success, but I think I'm okay. We'll see what we can come up with here. Let's start at the quarterback position, and I'm not breaking any news here, Kyler Murray, but I'm seeing sub-5 ownership over at FTN Daily when it comes to Kyler Murray. His price has only jumped from 8.2 to 8.3, and he's got a matchup here against Jacksonville. I think a lot of people will go to Patrick Mahomes, and Mahomes is fine. I just wanted to bring up Kyler again. I've talked about him in week 1, week 2. I don't want to get too cute here with Kyler Murray. Like, this guy has been unbelievable. 34 points in week 1, 38 points in week 2. So he had more points in week 2, and his price only jumped up 100. And there's something to be said about rostering a quarterback up at the top to get a little bit of a lower ownership as people try to find value at the QB position. So 9 touchdowns that he's had so far. He's got a rushing score in each game, and Jacksonville 3 plays of at least 40-plus yards, the second most in the NFL. Kyler is going to get his. And I think the reason he has a low ownership is because it's probably not going to be a competitive game. That Arizona's up in this game, and he's not going to be chucking too much. But if they're up in this game, it's because Kyler had his way through the air or maybe on the ground, because James Conner has really shown us nothing so far this season. 3.3 yards per pop. It hasn't been good. Russell Wilson is the other quarterback I would look at. Again, I have nothing against Patrick Mahomes, but Russell Wilson here at 7-6 and 8-4 on FanDuel in a dome against the Vikings. He has 6 TDs in his 2 games. He's been consistent, 26 fantasy points, 27 fantasy points. Minnesota, the 5th most fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, 4th most passing yards, and 5 passing touchdowns allowed so far as well, tied for the 2nd most. Also, they're allowing quarterbacks to have a 77.8% completion rate, which is the number 1 mark in the NFL. What do we know about Russell Wilson? Dude is absolutely accurate. He hardly has incompletions or turnovers. 10.5 yards per attempt through the air, the 2nd highest mark the Vikings to quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is interesting to me. I would actually fade him in tournaments. I think he's going to be super popular. He was the most picked up quarterback in fantasy this week. He's getting talked about as a great streamer, and I think he's fine. In cash, I just don't want a chalky quarterback. Or in tournaments, I don't want a chalky quarterback. So I think if you're playing cash, head-to-heads, 50-50s, I think he's decent. I think he's fine. At 5'8", he could certainly return value over at DraftKings. The Falcons have allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. 8 touchdowns, 9 plays of at least 20-plus yards, top 5 in the NFL. Hurts ran all over them. Daniel Jones, shout out to Tino, called it on this show last week. His rushing prop, his 95 rushing yards, that's what he had last week, and he had 27 in week 1. He's currently QB5 in fantasy right now. He's got weapons that we like against this Falcons squad. He tosses a couple touchdowns. He runs one in, or he racks up 40 yards on the ground. He's certainly returning value at that price at 5'8". He's a little bit more expensive on FanDuel. He's 7'4". Over to the running backs. Austin Eckler against KC. Alex Blickel was in here yesterday to talk him up at 7-2 over at DK and 7K on FanDuel. KC has allowed a league high 404 rushing yards, 6 yards per carry, 7 rushing touchdowns, 4 to running backs, and 4 runs of at least 20 yards. A league high across the board. I know they just played Baltimore. That's okay. There's still teams are running over KC right now. The 4th most fantasy points to running backs. Eckler had 0 targets in week 1, but he reeled in all 9 of his targets in week 2 for 61 yards. He has 7 red zone rushing attempts. He only had 17 last season, and he has 2 carries inside the 5. He only had 2 last year. He was 4th on his team in red zone rushing attempts. He's being used different in this offense. It's a bit of a new offense with LA, new play caller, new head coach, and they're using Eckler inside the red zone, which is perfect for his value. I think this is Saquon week. So I mentioned Daniel Jones. I know you play him in cash. Don't play Saquon Barkley in cash and head-to-head, smaller contests, but play him in tournaments. He's 6'5". He's 6'5". This is going to be as cheap as you see Saquon Barkley, and this week is his coming out party. I really do believe that. 84% of the snaps in week 2, 10 days rest. 13 for 57, had the 41-yard run against Washington. He caught a couple passes on 3 targets. The Falcons, 4.9 yards per carry, the 6th highest mark, top 10 in terms of rushing yards allowed. This is a breakout game for Clyde Edwards-Helaire as well. Up against the Chargers, this is just a straight disrespect price. He's 4'8". How could you not play this guy? Some of these plays are cash plays. Absolutely everyone that I've mentioned, great cash, except for Barkley and except for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Play this guy in tournaments. If you're playing 3 lineups, why not try him out in 1? He's 4'8". Jeremy Nichols of the Tennessee Titans is also 4'8". This is straight disrespect. He fumbled the ball. People are talking about him in a negative way. They want to get him off his rosters. Not a lot of people are going to play this guy. He had 27 of Kansas City's 31 rushing attempts last week, 87%. He's still getting the ball on the ground. he hasn't been great inside the red zone. He's not catching a lot of passes, but he's still a big part of this offense. The Chargers have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to backs, 3 runs of at least 20 yards, the 2nd most. Gibson had 108 total yards. Zeke and Pollard combined for 237 yards, 5 receptions. They each had a score. 54.5 is the game total. Here, we're going to see some points, I think, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Marvin Jones. I don't have to spend a lot on these guys, but for Justin Jefferson, 49% of his team's air yards, the 6th most, 25% target share. I just like this game a lot. And on the other side, I believe people will go to Tyler Lockett over DK Metcalf. They're a similar price, but Minnesota has allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, 5 touchdowns, 1 behind the league high. Chase Higgins, big games. Moore, Hopkins, AJ, all those guys had touchdowns. 2 wide receivers already have 100 yards against Minnesota this season. 8 plays of at least 20-plus yards, tied for the 6th most, and 2 plays of at least 40-plus yards, tied for the 2nd most as well. And for Lockett and DK, they both have a 29% target share. It's been Lockett who's had the big games, but DK is not forgotten about. Kyle Pitts, I saw Fant, 6 for 62, Big A, backup tight end, touchdown. Same thing in week 2. Thomas, 5 for 45, backup touchdown. Ricky Seals-Jones had a touchdown against the Giants. Kyle Pitts against New York, good spot. 5 for 73 last week against Tampa. And I want to give more time in the final segment, but a shout out here to Marvin Jones, 25% target share, tied for 17th most, number 2 in air yards, 279. And check out our free air yards tool over at FTN at daily.com. Trevor Lawrence is pushing the ball down the field. He is 2nd in air yards as well, 84 attempts inside the top 6, and also touchdowns in back-to-back games for Marvin Jones. We got a bet builder. Tino has one, and I have one next here on Mean Streets. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. So we got a couple same game parlays. I'll let producer Tino go first. What do you got for us for tonight, buddy? No, yeah, I like that. I dig it. Over at Bet365, they're giving away free $20. We mentioned it last week to do a little bet builder. I got one 22-1, which is not as an extreme, but I like this. So it's a lot of what I've already talked about. Ingram over 9.5 rushing attempts. What's that? Okay. Welcome back to Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. We're going to have a little fun here in the last segment with some same game parlays. Producer Tino has a long shot for us. Kick us off, sir.
Okay, so we're going to mix here a little bit of what Jill said and a little bit of what I said earlier on my show, Betting with Tino and Betty, which will premiere later in today, so you can confirm. But I love DJ Moore over 5 receptions. 5.5 is the total. That's his floor. He's gotten nothing less than 6 this year, so I think that one's a pretty firm lock. We got Brennan Cooks anytime score, which is something I also like, but we're going to throw in Davis Mills anytime score, which Jill's just said, 900, plus 900, 9-1 feels great to me. And Robbie Anderson is another guy I'm going to throw in here. So 2 from me, 2 from Jill's, and because Davis Mills loves throwing interceptions more than anyone I've ever seen play quarterback in the NFL, we're going to say Davis Mills, 1+ interceptions here. We have a same game 5-leg parlay here, Meaney, plus 160. 160 to 1. $5 is going to win me 800 today, and I'm going to have myself a Thursday. I feel pretty good about it.
Wow. I like it. I hope that hits, sir. All right, I got one not as extreme. It's a lot of what the plays I've already talked about. So over at Bet365, they're giving away free $20, and they have the Bet Builder, which they're trying out, and it's super fun. I just do long shots like Tino just had, but here's one that I like at 22 to 1. Ingram for 10 rushing attempts, DJ Moore for 6 grabs and 67 receiving yards, Brennan Cooks for 6 grabs and over 66.5 receiving yards, and then Sam Darnold over 1.5 passing touchdowns. These are so fun because they correlate. So if you want to take a quarterback and you want to take a guy to have more than catches, make sure you take his yards as well, and then have some fun with it. Good luck. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.